Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this general government meeting, December 7th. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Dennehy, absent. Councilmember Schmisher. Here. Councilmember B. Smith, absent. Okay, Councilmember Stein. Here. Councilmember Tracy,
Here.
Councilmember Worthington,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick,
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Thank you for that, Cindy. Tonight, we have a discussion considering a proposed watershed protection ordinance, and you want are you or Travis leading us off here? Or
Could- I hate to interrupt.
Emily's got her hand up already.
Yeah, sorry, I hate to interrupt, but I'm not sure if this is a question, a comment, or a reminder, but just wanted to say it's more difficult to participate in meetings by Zoom, particularly those which are more informal discussions, such as committee meetings. I'm sorry I can't be there this evening, but be thankful I am not exposing you to the virus I have. Those on Zoom cannot read body language in the room. The owl is somewhat delayed in aiming its camera at those who are speaking, and informal discussions are less clear. The owl camera that shows everyone around a table provides little to no information to a Zoom participant. The owl microphones do not pick up people very well who are not close to the mic, and some, of course, have softer voices. It's easier for people in the room to determine when someone is finished speaking so they don't speak over them. So I'm not sure what the solution is other than for all of us to be more aware. I don't wish to interrupt anyone, but I would like to be able to participate in the discussions in the same way that those in the room participate. That's all I wanted to say, just a reminder.
thank you for that. So, Ryan,
Yeah. This is a first draft ordinance for source water protection. We are looking for council's direction. We do plan on having more meetings in a committee setting before this comes to city council. And obviously that depends on the direction that we get from city council. Just, keep in mind as we're going through this, that staff and city council are stewards of the city's water system, and we're trying to look at it through that lens and overall the protection of the water system. And it is our only source of drinking water, and please keep that in mind as we're going through this. Part of the reason that this is coming forward, we're seeing a lot more developments both in Cañon City and Fremont County, and we want to be proactive to protect the watershed and our drinking source as we go. So not necessarily to be a barrier to development, but to have a seat at the table. The last place that we want to be is in a reactive state where something is approved at the county level that may have a negative impact on the water system or the watershed, and we don't have a way to comment on that after the fact. So, and one last thing I do want to point out, the city's water intake is on our western boundary of the city limits. So most of that, what feeds into the water intake is actually in the county. So it's upstream of the intake. So I think that's an important fact as we're going through this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Travis to kind of talk about watershed protection, what it is, and maybe go into more depth about why we're looking at this.
Sure. So I thought I'd just start off with, what source water is. It's raw, untreated supply of water. It's typically surface water, groundwater, used for current or potential future drinking water. Source water protection is a proactive approach to safeguard, maintain, or improve the quality and or quantity of drinking water sources in their contributing areas. In addition to selecting a high quality water supply, minimizing potential risks and impacts to the source is one of the first key steps in a multiple barrier approach to providing clean drinking water. Effective source water protection programs often address existing issues or concerns. They should also be forward-looking. to evaluate and address future challenges and involve stakeholders throughout the planning and implementation process. Stakeholders include any group or individual interested in, affected by, or having an impact on source water protection activities. Stakeholders should be diverse and vary based on local challenges faced in source water protection areas. So some of the benefits that can come from source water protection, you can have, public health protection through improved understanding and stewardship of the watershed, aquifer, and drinking water sources. You can have improved source water quantity and quality, improved environmental stewardship and accountability, improved habitat ecosystem services protection, so forth. I won't read them all. I wanted to also go in, nothing is without potential negative side effects as well. Meeting with stakeholders, including the county, will be key in ensuring that the city is not imposing overly burdensome regulations that will hamper responsible development for the ranching farming community. So with that, I wanted to also kind of go off of what Ryan said, and this is a first draft. I'm fully aware that there is a ton of work to do to get everybody on board with a potential ordinance. And all I was really looking for tonight was some direction from council, whether you wanted me to continue on doing that work or not. I'm not looking for you to approve this version of this ordinance. I'm looking to see whether this is a potential important aspect that the council wants me to look at.
So questions or comments from council on what we've got in front of us?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
If I remember right, the initiation of this exploration was in reaction to a lot of activity happening with the Zephyr mining and community groups with a lot of concern over the impact of that mine that it could take on Highland City lands. And this is one of our tools that we consider to help protect our city and help alleviate some of those concerns if Zephyr were to continue to develop. However, currently Zephyr, it seems, I mean, I don't know, that according to their statement, they just luckily made today or yesterday, was that Highland City is in hiatus, or their Dawson Ranch is in hiatus. Not really sure if much will be happening. If anything, it's going to be a really long. And so I guess my biggest concern is that the way this ordinance is now, it's covering all kinds of things. And I have a lot of concerns with that. And the ordinance itself, and it says in the study that it's for major things that require, the EPA National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, that they require permits. But the ordinance doesn't say anything about that. It just said all pollutants, all activities, all everything. And I guess my biggest question is, do we want to pursue this? Are there other compelling reasons why we need to, or do we need to just continue to keep a pulse on potential mining activity, gold mining activity?
Sure. So I don't think that as this ordinance is written, and again, going through that, it's has the potential to change a lot if it goes forward. Nothing in this ordinance, I don't think would affect a mining like a gold mine. So really, while it may have come up via that, I don't think that it really is kind of turned into that. I don't think anything in here the intent of the ordinance is not to impose any more strict regulation than the state would impose on a mine. That is not the intent of this. It's smaller developments that could have direct stormwater implications on the riverbank. And again, like Ryan said, having kind of a seat at the table to make sure that that there is proper stormwater protections in place, and B, once those are in place, are they being implemented?
What do you mean by smaller?
So something that the state may not look at, because again, if the state's looking at it, I don't see any need for the city to look at it.
Well, that's not what this study says.
Well, it's not what the study says, but you'll notice that there's a lot of stuff in the study that's not the ordinance. Just because it was in the study, it did not make it into the ordinance.
I will say, based on what we're talking about, one, I would say probably mineral mining and not just limit it to gold. And second, when if some issues had not been brought up at the state to begin with, as to the things that Zephyr did not address at the beginning, they would not be on hiatus right now. And so to automatically assume that the state is gonna be able to dictate or regulate everything that we should be concerned about, I would question that. Because there were a lot of things that were brought up there that had caused Zephyr to have to go back and start over again, because water is one of the biggest issues. So just to say that, it would be something like to consider.
And Emily, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thanks. I have three quick things. First, I just want to say I do support this in concept, so I hope we can continue forward with an ordinance like this. I have a couple of questions. One is, I'm not clear, just looking through the plan, the Source Water Protection Action Plan, I guess it's dated last year, 2021. I'm not 100% clear where the proposed Dawson Mine is located on that source water protection boundary map. So at some point, I'd like to know that. And then I also wonder, are we planning to go through that plan at all tonight to address questions about what the content or not?
We certainly can. I mean, we can go over whatever you would like to. Again, yeah, we can go over whatever you
I
like
can
to.
answer that. No.
So what I would suggest is as a way to proceed here, let's focus on the proposed regulation first perhaps, and then perhaps expand out from there. Did you have some other questions? you had, Emily?
Councilmember Tracy, on page 9. In orange, the Dawson Ranch would be in the Temple Canyon Grave Creek, which is, looks like it's a 1B category of vulnerability.
So I didn't hear all of what you said, Mayor. Are you saying that the mine is located within that particular critical catchment, as they call it?
Yes,
Yeah,
Okay.
Kathy will speak.
I have a bigger voice. Yes, Emily, it is within where it says Temple Canyon, Great Creek.
Okay,
That
okay.
is the area.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Yeah. Something?
Just as it relates to the ordinance, I'd love to hear just a little bit more about the specifics in the ordinance and the intent behind it. I know that that it's in its very, very early draft and that likely parts of it would change were it to move forward. But I think hearing a little bit more from you and Ryan about what your goals are, what you hope that this, accomplishes in more specificity would be really helpful. Particularly since we do have a pretty big crowd and I see that most of them don't have it in front of them. So I want to make sure that we're all kind of understanding what the ordinance actually says as well, or early draft ordinance actually says as well.
Sure. So, I mean, the basis of it is again, so if there's it started off with like, if there was I'm sorry, I'm struggling with the term, but like something that came through the county that would need some sort of stormwater protection, would the water have be a referral agency? That's what I was trying to go for, making sure that we would be a referral agency. And if I remember right, there was a time when we were, but I think there were some issues with, we were taking too much time. We were kind of holding up some county developments. And as it was back then, it created some hardships. So it was trying to get us again a seat at the table, make sure we're a referral agency and that we had the ability to go make sure that if there's any stormwater requirements put in place, that those were going to be inspected. Because I don't believe that the county inspects the stormwater requirements as is.
To the best of my knowledge, if they do, it's very sporadic.
Sure.
I think the last time that previous code enforcement officers for the county said anything to me was probably 5 or 6 years ago, that they were going to go do some inspections and make sure that stormwater features were being maintained and operating. And it appeared at that time that they hadn't done that for many years. So the county is not under a CDPHE stormwater discharge permit. They probably never will be. Canyon City is the only entity within the county that does have that permit. And our jurisdiction is limited to our city limits.
Just as a, a hypothetical, if there's a development that goes to the county and, for example, like a feed yard or something like that, and it's within one of our catchment basins. We have an interest in whether or not there are proper stormwater measures put in place to make sure that anything from that feed yard doesn't make it into the water system. So that just as a simple example.
Sure. Yeah, and it's not the entire catchment, again, as written, it's, the defined scope. Of the 5 miles and 1,000 feet.
And so I had a particular question on that. So where exactly is our city water intake located? And I want to make it generalize that comment too, and say that for sure, if we do go forward with this, which I'm not in favor of at this time, but if we do go forward with it, we do need a very good map that shows exactly what the affected area is, what we're talking about. Because the maps, for the most part, for me, in the documents that we have from Corriente, is that who it was? Are pretty much unreadable. Especially some of the more critical ones are pretty much
Sure.
unreadable.
I mean, again, totally understand there's a ton of.
Do we have better maps from them, or is that what we've got?
That's what we have right now. I mean, this was kind of a small scale voyage into this so far. So,
Okay,
yeah, we could definitely get better
So-
maps,
so-
more detail, that sort of thing.
but interpreting that, we got what we paid for.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair way of putting that. I mean, I didn't want to put a ton of resources into this. I didn't want to put a ton of time in this,
Right.
I was trying to be as responsible with time and resources as
Gotcha.
possible while providing this worthwhile document.
And so it's Grape Creek above or below our intake.
So, both actually, because to answer your question, we have 2 intakes.
Mhm.
Okay, we have the intake that is, right there at the Low Head Dam, right above the pedestrian bridge. So that's our main intake. Our secondary intake, what we call our auxiliary pump station, is on the hydraulic ditch. So the hydraulic ditch comes off of the Arkansas River, just I don't know, half a mile above or something like that. So that's where the hydraulic ditch comes from, but that's not where our intake is. Our intake is on the hydraulic ditch. So it's that brick building on Tunnel Drive. So if you ever, and then
Yes.
you look down and see that brick building, that's our auxiliary pump station. So that would be our auxiliary intake. So that would be the highest one that we'd be talking about.
And the
And
primary.
that is above Great Creek, but our primary is below.
And where is that in relation to the Black Hills property?
The intake.
Yeah,
So it is, so if you're walking on the river walk, like a kind of the new pedestrian bridge river walk, it's about 300 yards to the west.
thank you.
Yep.
Mhm. Other comments or,
I want to go back to, Travis, you talked about how the state's taking care of, some of the big stuff that they have to get state things, and this is to address the smaller. I guess I'm almost more opposite, where I think for the smaller developments, I don't see how they could afford to have engineered studies and all these soil analysis, geologic analysis, and water use analysis, and all these other things. But it could provide us an opportunity to be at a table, maybe for the big 7 of severability productions, that we have that voice, because we probably have the biggest concerns. Of
Sure. That's- Absolutely a direction we can take.
I see, if anything, the way it's written, it's for these bigger companies that are multi-million, if not $1 billion things that can take care of this. The dairy.
so that could be a potential path forward from my perspective. If we're interested in pursuing this, what we need to be able to define clearly is what our interests are, what is it we're trying to protect, okay? And let me say that, you know, what I really saw in the Corriente study was is if you're going to make good regulations, there are a lot of different factors you have to balance, but the main ones are cost, risk, and benefit. And I did not see any of those in the study, and that's fine, because that's like we said, we got what we paid for there. But if we're going to delve into these regulatory waters, we need to be able to clearly identify what risks are, what benefits are for mitigating those risks, and what costs are associated with those mitigations, because it is not a, you know, it's not an unconstrained field that we're playing on here. And as you know, almost all federal regulation that I'm aware of deal with those issues and have numerical ways to sort those out so that you can, so that you end up with good regulation and not regulation for regulation's sake or regulation based on fear. Fear is not a strategy. And that is a lot of what I saw in Corriente was fear. Well, things could degrade and we have to be afraid of that. And so we've got to act. And so to me, that's not a good basis for regulation. We need to clearly identify what our interests are. I mean, everybody's interested in good water, that's true. But if we're going to put our feet on that path, that's a very expensive path to be able to craft good regulation, because there's a lot of study that has to go in it. And not only that, but the other thing that I would say is if we want to go down this path, one of the ways to sharpen our focus would be to see where the regulatory holes are. Are there regulatory holes that need to be filled that are not being filled? And I understand concerns that perhaps the state is not a good regulator, but they do have the regulations. They have a primary jurisdiction in a lot of areas, including directly in mine sites. But that would almost be a legal analysis in addition to a regulatory analysis of where are the holes, what needs to be filled.
Saying that in a slightly different way,
Mhm.
I think it would also help us prioritize where we actually need to spend our limited city resources and dollars if we are to go down this path, because it should be in the areas where we're concerned that the biggest impact could happen. So that, again, if we were to go down this path, we don't end up in the same issue that we were in before, where we're not being responsive, where we're holding up development.
Absolutely.
Because if we're trying to do this for every single project that could potentially impact source water, I think we would need to have 20 more of you at least.
So
At least
I
one.
have, I just have one comment, and to your comment about fear, you know what comes after fear? Devastation. That's what happens sometimes when there is even if it's inadvertent, and then it's in the city's lap. So I don't agree with a lot of regulation up front, but Travis, you do a lot of sampling in this area in the basin, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I think we just need tools that if he flags something, that, you know, we can try to figure out where it came from and have some way to resolve that.
That's, I understand your point, but the only thing I would say with that is if it's flagged in a sample, that means it's in the water.
And it's too late.
And it's too late.
It's too late.
You know,
And
that would be a more reactionary.
Right.
standpoint.
right, so we need to,
Now, sampling is really important to establish baselines, that's for sure. You know, how is the health now versus in a year or two? So you can't wait until there's an issue to sample because you don't know what the condition was before. So that's where sampling becomes really critical.
so, but I totally get that having too many regulations at the front end hold up development.
Sure. That's
And
why,
so
you
we
know,
don't
there
really
was
see that either.
certainly a blurb in the ordinance as written that, you know, us being a referral agency to the county, we would not be holding up the county. We would not have the power to hold up the county. You know, we would just be a referral agency, and much like our referral process, if we don't get a response from somebody, well, we
Mhm.
we tag that as a no response, you
Right.
know, I mean, depending on if it's CDOT or not, but.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the point being that, you know, that we did put that in there to, you know, try to alleviate some of that concern.
Right,
So
yeah,
then essentially it would be an internal city policy that would determine what city resources were spent, looking at which developments were actually referred to us.
Yeah, I mean, there would definitely have to be buy-in from the county. I mean, you know, we would not know about developments on our own. And so it'd have to be, you know, a good enough ordinance that the county would accept it. I mean, if they were against it, then it would be in essence useless. So, I mean, it'd have to be, again, they're an important stakeholder in this process.
The, Travis, I have a question for you. It's thought provoking and remember, speak up as you're speaking because to help Emily hear what's going on, but if we so desire, what lawful additions could we add to the current regulation to ensure greater pollution reduction in waters?
That is quite the thought-provoking question, and I don't believe that I'm equipped to answer it off the cuff at this moment.
Okay, something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
But the reason why I ask it is because I actually have, you know, a lot of specific comments about the regulation itself. Number one, in my view, what if we enacted this regulation as is, which has basically a definitions section, a jurisdictional areas section, unlawful discharges section, and a permitting system. And that's really that comprises the regulation is written. The issue one of the major issues I have is the unlawful discharges section. So if I cut my grass in my front yard and take the clippings and dump it in my backyard, have I under this regulation, is that an unlawful act?
Yeah, I mean, I think to answer your question, I think more broadly, I think that there definitely needs to be more definition in some of those definitions, right? You know, I mean, so I don't want to make it so it's illegal for somebody to shovel dirt in their yard, right? So, I mean, that has to be defined. So what amount of surface area would be a trigger? Those sort of things would have to be defined, in my view. It's not,
It's any pollutant, any materials. Period, all the way down to not even being able to allow any animal to go into a water.
that's not any animal, to be clear.
But that's what it says.
It was excluding
Or-
domestic animals.
Excluded.
Well, okay, excluding domestic.
Yeah.
Well, the other way to ask the question is, if I take my dog into my backyard and give them a bath, do I violate the regulation?
No, I would say that's a domestic animal, so no. But again, to answer your.
It does, it exempts them.
It's domestic, yes.
Okay, where does that happen?
E, page 3E.
3,
1320-030E,
excluding domestic animals.
yeah. So,
So-
But we're
And so-
agricultural
But it'd
community.
be illegal to do that to a deer.
If I could make a comment, this is where you may want to really look at the stormwater permit for the city. They have very defined parameters for construction, what construction activities are, what size triggers that. So, you know, if you're looking to fill a gap, you would have to be going smaller than 1 acre because the state requires permits for disturbance of 1 acre or more, or less than 1 acre if it's part of a common
Yeah.
plan of
Well,
development.
that's
So
when
one of
you
the-
get to the cost, risk and benefit. Because
Yeah.
Developments under an acre, that, I don't think that qualifies as needing to trigger our concerns.
yeah, I was just gonna say that I was looking at Rifle past something like this, source water protection ordinance, and I believe they went 1/2 acre. And it wasn't necessarily all the requirements, they wasn't word for word or anything like that, but they said 1/2 acre. You know, you would certainly would have to have proper BMPs in place. Now, I'm not saying that they should go through all kinds of soil analysis. I'm not trying to say that at all. All I'm saying is that's what Rifle did for a half an acre. They did enact.
If we did not have the unlawful discharge section, would the intent of the regulation still be honored? In other words, if we were just looking at jurisdictional areas and a permitting system, that might be a legal question. If we did not have a unlawful discharge section, does any of the rest of the proposed ordinance hang together?
Well, I guess it depends on what your intent is. If your intent is to protect your water source, you need that section. Because someone might dump something in your water source that injures it. Maybe they're not subject to your permit requirements. And this allows you to go in and fix that problem. So it depends on what your intent is.
I understand, and I come back to although Councilman member Stein and I disagree on this, but fear is not a strategy. And that, that's my basic.
I'm not gonna engage in that conversation, but I guess for what it's worth, and I think you may have been told this on Monday. This is a statutory authority that the legislature has given all municipalities in the state of Colorado, home rule and statutory. Several communities passed these ordinances. Travis has already mentioned Rifle. I'm aware of many other communities that have this, and maybe they all vary in accordance with those communities. The language in this ordinance has been upheld in the court system. So that's just information for you. It doesn't mean you can't change it and refine it, but it has been upheld. So it's not completely pulled out of the sky. I think for what it's worth, passing preventative measures is important when it comes to the drinking supply. And that's why the legislature stepped in and granted extraterritorial authority to municipalities as the services of the community for drinking water in a lot of the communities. So that's just a little background on how this ordinance came about. It was not drafted from the study. So the disconnects you might be seeing are because the ordinance was not drafted based upon the study, just for reference there.
Similar communities that have similar ordinances, Crested Butte, Georgetown, Blackhawk, Idaho Springs, Steamboat Springs, Salida, Kiowa, Silverton, Castle Rock, Rush, Palisade, Meeker, Alma, Victor, Manitou Springs, Palmer Lake, and Pagosa Springs.
Could we see some of those?
Sure.
There.
Yeah, I found all of those on Unicode, and I can get you links to. Yeah.
Would it be possible just if anybody in the audience had thoughts or questions?
Sure.
Oh, it was just a question for John.
Yeah, what Amy is suggesting is that if any of you have any comments at the table or in the audience, if you'd like to say something, we'd like to hear you.
Well, I can tell you as a business owner that deals with CDPHP on a daily basis, both from a permanent facility as well as construction facility. I mean, we're already very highly regulated. I guess I question the additional layering of permits and what is being proposed here. Trying to understand the cost benefit, and I guess first and foremost, have there been issues that have driven this discussion to start with? I mean, is the city seeing an uptick in water quality at the intake, or to the comments previously, is this fear mongering, for lack of a better term, and the what ifs, if you will? Because I guess the other question I have related to the 5-mile limit between the city of Canyon City and BLM, those are the largest property owners within those watersheds. So that's already going to be very highly regulated on if any development can even take place within those watersheds. So to write an ordinance that's, I guess, really doesn't have a whole lot of value just because of land ownership within those basins as they are right now, are we gaining anything as a community? And just adding more regulations, both on the county as well as a few private business owners, because it is very much singling out certain industries here, the way the report is written.
Thanks.
I mean, I see it not as fear mongering at all. It's merely preparation. And it's looking to the future and any sort of potential issue that may occur. I mean, yes, this could be something I'm afraid of, but if you look at the Gold King mine discharge in 2015 that occurred in near Silverton, and it ended up affecting the Animas River. Some communities weren't able to take water from the river for a year after that, due to higher levels of heavy metals. And it's just, you know, I understand development does need to happen. Your business is a fantastic business that's great for this community. But I think this is merely just a preparatory thing. It's just exploratory and to see like what we can do to protect our watersheds, because every single person in this room showers in the water that comes from that. We feed our children, you know, the things baked and whatever. We use that water for everything. So it's important to preserve and protect.
Can I just say real quick, kind of the same thing. It's not fear, it's prophylactically acting, you know, it's things we promote in health, it's things we promote in everything. So prophylactically acting is not fear, holding on to fear, you know, I can live without fear and take care of myself and prevent things in the future. So, and it's cheaper, and you know, I'm not gonna get too much into money because I don't understand all that side of this, but prophylactically speaking and health and a lot of things that is cheaper in the forefront.
We need everyone to say their names.
Oh,
for their
yes,
phone.
if you would say your names. You wanna,
Danny Gzak Heavy Equipment. Chris Moffett, Road Warrior Rio.
Kayla Miller. and Mr. Bessie.
thank you for that, thank you for that reminder.
If I could just quickly say something.
Sure.
I tend to.
Name, please.
Oh,
Will.
So that Emily can hear you.
Will Colin. In this case, I'll just speak.
That's the microphone there,
Where's the mic?
right there.
Oh, right there, okay. I definitely agree with both RG Rio and Danny. Although I feel that I agree probably more with Danny. It seems like we're doing an awful lot of work for not really regulating much. If you guys want to regulate something, I'm a ditch shareholder on the hydraulic ditch, and they've been complaining about what's going into that ditch for a long time. And what if Pueblo said, hey, we're gonna do the exact same thing, only we're coming all the way up to Canyon City? Guess who who would be in a lot of trouble right then? You guys. I mean, you're gonna look for something to fix. Fix the problems we have currently. Let's not fix the problem we don't have. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm Alex Ewers. I'm an engineer here in town. I actually came here as a raft guide originally. I love the river. I kayak in the river, throw my kids in the river. All those things. You know, honestly, if anything, from an engineering standpoint, this means more work for me. Yay. That's, you know, so really I should be very for this. First off, Travis, awesome job at the city. You do a ton of really great stuff and all that. And I think the city should protect the water source for sure. This is a first step. You made it very clear that this is a step. And you know, we're all going to learn together and figure out how to make this what it should be. But some of the things that stood out to me. You made a comment that, you know, we no longer have a seat at the table with the county. You know, I think, and because, you know, it was taking too long to review and all that, I think maybe part of the solution for that is figuring out, okay, how can we review things faster and do it in their timeline? Because this seems to be going back to just, okay, now we're reviewing things again and not really fixing that problem. With the comment on the hydraulic ditch, it's actually an interesting point because the way I read this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is this covers everything upstream of the city's water rights, which actually includes a large portion of the hydraulic ditch, which could mean that this could actually be enacted and regulated for the northern part of Canyon City. And because the way it's
intakes, sorry.
Was that?
It's of the intakes, not of the proper rights.
But it did say water rights. Section A or section 1320.020, section A As well as a distance of 1,000 feet from the banks of any such municipal water supply or any waterworks, by mobile. Well, somewhere that says water, municipal water supply, which if you go to the definition, means all surface and underground water rights.
Understood.
So anyways, that's a small.
Yeah.
But, Linda made a really good comment about the state already regulates anything over 1 acre. So anything that's not regulated right now is under an acre in size. And that's theoretical for sure. You know, I think there's some work to be done at the county to make sure that's enabled or enacted and regulated properly, but you know, let's fix any holes over there rather than try to just make new things. Yeah, one of the biggest issues that I think is already been talked about that should be fixed is talk about any excavation. The idea from you guys isn't, you know, a guy digging a hole in his front yard or anything like that. So we got to come up with some kind of size on that, whether it's volume or acreage. Yeah, you know, it requires both historic and proposed runoff volumes. Typically, those calculations require an engineer or a hydraulic scientist, something like that. So for somebody who's building a house and grading around their house, you know, up in Howard, we're not going to want them, or let's say Parkdale, we're not going to want them to have to get a permit like this, and we don't want them to have to come and hire me. We don't want them to have to come and deal with engineers. My biggest recommendation for this is if the city chooses to go forward with something like this, instead of just taking what other cities have done and saying, oh, well, it worked for them, let's make it work for us, because we don't have a whole lot of industrial area or upstream. We don't have a whole lot of potential development opportunities. We do have mining opportunities for sure. But I would recommend getting a team together that says, okay, well, let's have sediment transportation or sediment transport engineer, pollution engineer, go ahead and model our 3 biggest fear scenarios. What if there's this mine here and it leaks into the river? Then what if there's this development here and a bunch of sediment goes in the river or whatever? You know, come up with roughly 3 fear scenarios of what could actually happen. Upstream will model what that's actually going to look like, how it's going to be transported to the city's intake. Then you have a second part of that team that actually looks at the wastewater or at the water treatment plant, sorry, which is an awesome water treatment plant. And says, okay, now we can interpret those results. You can see what pollutants got to the intake in those 3 scenarios. How is our water treatment plant going to be able to handle that there? But if we look at that from a scientific standpoint, instead of just saying, what if, and trying to put a blanket over it all, it'll really help the development community to continue doing things that we're not going to be harmed by and still protect the city. That makes sense. Thank you, Trevor.
Thanks, Alex. Any other comments?
John, I probably shouldn't get involved in this, but I'm going to. Everything that I know about water, I've studied it quite a bit, and this is a point source issue. And we've ran into this on the Arkansas from the headwaters and mining in Leadville all the way to Lamar, and our salt and salinity problems downstream to Kansas. And our county has seats on the Arkansas River Basin. And I think that there's an awful lot of history and information there in that resource. The county also has, and the city, rights and representatives on Upper Arkansas Water Conservancy District. There's a lot of information there with point source issues. We've studied a lot of stuff on Grape Creek, on the other creeks, all the creeks from Leadville, clear down to Pebble Reservoir. There's a ton of information out there. This statute was written by legal counsel somewhere, taken off of I should say just a boilerplate thing. I have some issues with a lot of stuff in here that I don't care for at all. And the hydraulic ditch, maybe our intake is above the there, but if you look at some things that have happened with Salida, it's called New Salida Ditch Company, working on their copper dam, got into some real issues with the 404 permitting. and it costs them a fortune. And we're adding a new layer of law here that it could backfire on us big time without knowing the knowledge of what other communities have done. Now, I did contact our director, Terry Skanga in Upper Ark about these laws, about this law in particular, and what's happened with other cities. And I got some opinions on that, and I think that what we need to do is research a little bit better what we really would like to do with point source. Fear came from really 911. And a lot of the municipalities all over the state were concerned about if their water was contaminated, what might happen to them. And that created a lot of issues statewide. I'm just gonna leave it within the state, okay? And there's some things in here that we have so many issues to deal with. Our burn scars located upriver, we have 2 of them very bad. All the water community is working on what we call watershed health. And that where the Royal Gorge burned, the hydraulic ditch and the city is continuing to get a lot of debris, sedimentation in there, and it's creating numerous problems for both of us. And other ditch companies as well, who divert off of the Arkansas. The second burn scar that we have further upstream above Cotopaxi, that has created a tremendous amount of problems for us. I have talked quite a bit with Travis, and one of the things that Travis told me is the ability to get more funding to try to correct some of the problems that we have with the silt and debris above up the river stems from the fact that we do not have a point source watershed protection plan. Well, I do know that after COVID, the state now has a lot more money available for issues, and that's come from the round table, and the state shares the money and whatever. And I'm not talking right now stormwater, but that is one of the things I want to mention is stormwater into the hydraulic above the diversion point coming off of the hill is a big issue. And I don't think we need to spend our time trying to solve that. I took the GIS and I mapped it from your intake all the way to a mile above the bridge going to the new gravel pit at Martin Marietta, and looked at the owners up through there. If you look at that in the BLM product actual land owned by them, you have ranchers that put cattle on the BLM product. You're going to be tying into the biggest problem you ever saw if you try and say you can't have cattle near the river. Us agriculture people have been watering stock out of the river and streams forever, and once you start that, you're going to bite a big bullet. And that research is not in this report. And quite frankly, I'm telling you, you're barking up a big tree when you tear into that one. Stormwater coming off into the ditch above your pump, there's very little places that can do. The issue we have with water in our city, our forefathers were very intelligent, and we have the best water source in the world. The problem is it's native water. You have no storage. Whatever money you're going to spend on this, take that money and spend it on getting storage out of Great Creek, out of raising that dam, and getting a pipeline directly from that, so you don't have the problem. Point source. Let's look at this. We're going the wrong direction. Excuse me, Travis, I shouldn't get on the high horse here, but my God, if you're gonna spend money on a point source, let's look at some of these cities that you read off. And I know some of them, and I know what the problem is, and I've talked to their engineers and what they're doing. A lot of them are saying, we're throwing money away like mad with this point source idea. Now, we go back to say, can we get more money to do a problem or fix something out here that we really need to fix? But if we get into the source water part, our stormwater in this county, going into the river, going down to the Pebble Reservoir. Pebble Reservoir is filling up with silt right now from the 2 burn scars we had. There's issues going on with Southeastern and their water that they're transporting down the river that it's gonna come back on us sometime. And if we don't work on our stormwater system here, we're gonna be like Colorado Springs. And I get you manuals, one after another, of the problem that Colorado Springs is faced with right now. And if we want to go down to Pebble and below the fountain and what's going on there. So we're spending our time and our energy on something here that we have tons of regulation with 404 permitting and with reminding that I think if you look at the ground and the area upstream of our intake, let's go to Leadville and look at the mining issue. That will really open your eyes, all right? And we have a lot of drainages in Buena Vista and above that Upper Ark's been worried about on camping and things there coming into the river. So what we're talking about here is a minuscule little section of the river that is mainly BLM and city owned, which city is Royal Gorge, which if we want to put money somewhere, let's try and keep the debris and the sedimentation out of that canyon coming down to our intake. And I can go on. I shouldn't do that. I'm taking too much time. And I went over my 3 minutes, man.
No, yeah, there's really no need to apologize. I appreciate you.
Well, what we need to do is get the city and the county more involved with the Arkansas Roundtable, maybe Upper Ark, and maybe Southeastern. That's where all the brains are pertaining to water, stormwater, point source contamination, and everything else. And we've been pretty direct in really supporting those agencies and learning what's going on out there. And with that, I'll shut up. Okay.
Thank you, though, Manny.
I do have a question for Manny.
Sure.
You have an incredible depth of knowledge.
Do I have what now?
An incredible depth of knowledge, and I really appreciate you sharing that. And I am curious, though, you talked about a difficulty in getting funding to help with the burn scar sediments and contaminants.
No, we went to the round table, and this was Mr. Hartman and I, and we got quite a bit of money from that, from the round table, to fix the Royal Gorge problem afterward. You can fix with what money we had, we fixed what we could. There was probably more money there if we'd apply again. But I think is what my comment was, when I talked to Travis, he was saying that a lot of the communities that they have a watershed protection plan can get more dollars through those agencies. And I'm saying there is some funding maybe there that we could go after without the point source water protection.
But just a general watershed protection plan could help you get.
I don't know that. I'm not. I can't answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm under the impression that the more, I shouldn't say the more. Having a source water protection plan certainly looks good in an application for watershed protection. Maybe I'll put it that way. But it's also me never applying for that, so take it with a grain of salt, please.
Sounds like we should do some research on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah, because we were talking, what was it, on top of Monarch, I believe, they just did.
Well, we've done an awful lot of work with what you call watershed planning or watershed health. We've done that with Upper Ark and assistance of other agencies, mainly Southeastern. The people who are transporting water, project water down to Pebble Reservoir and then pumping it to Colorado Springs, Aurora, up above. But ready from Pueblo, you've got all the little towns all the way up to the top of Monument, pumping water and getting water from Pebble Reservoir. And those people are all willing to assist in the forest health on Monarch, and so we've gone in applications and we've done a lot of timber removal so that we don't have the burn fires like we've had at the road version above. So if we can protect the watershed, we can reduce the amount of sediment and stuff that comes down the river. So there's a whole group. We're dealing with the Forest Service and BLM and others pertaining to that. So that's a huge project, and that's something that people in the water world need to be aware of, and that's where I think we need more knowledge to everybody here. We don't want to get caught with our pants down, not have water someday, and storage is our biggest problem in a drought. And that's one that the city of Canyon City is totally reliable on native water. And if we don't have native water, then you're gonna have to go buy water from Upper Ark, augmentation water, and have them release the water during a time. When we had 2002, the High Valley ditch was shut off, could have been shut off one day. And we're 1863 water right. And we were really concerned about that, and because Upper Ark and really the city of Pueblo with the city water works then, and the power plant out at Comanche, because of those people, we were able to get augmentation water and it prevented the shut off for one day. And then the next day we were back on. So those are key points to us, because the city is, you're very rich in water. So is Florence, but it's native water, and storage is so much more important to you to have your total portfolio taken care of.
Sure.
Than anything else.
And
And in here, one of the things that's mentioned is groundwater. Well, that one, be like having it in this contract scared, or this ordinance scares the hell out of me when you start talking about an underground water. You're opening up a whole new can of worms with that in here, and that's just one little thing I see. So I'm gonna be quiet here.
Okay,
Just for the record, storage is a concern of ours as well, and Travis and I, that's something that we are working towards, so.
Good.
We have a couple things in the mix that can't really be talked about in a public forum, but it is certainly something that we're looking at.
great.
Yeah.
Emily, I see you've got your hand up.
Yes, thanks. This discussion, I think, maybe illustrates why the city used to have years ago a city council water committee in addition to general government, that whether it's issues like water protection, water storage, future water rate studies, whatever it is, I would suggest that the city consider having whether it's a city council committee on the same level as general government or not, we might want to consider going back to a specialized group like that to really become more expert in these issues and provide hopefully better recommendations to council. But I have a question for Manny, if that's okay. When I came on council in January of this year, I think one of the things I was assigned to was something, and I don't remember the exact name, but a watershed protection council. But in talking with the mayor and talking with Travis, we didn't really find what that was. So whatever that is, if it exists, I have been negligent in not being involved since January. So Manny, is there actually a water protection council for this area? I appreciate all the other entities you talked about, Upper Ark and the Basin Roundtable, and the fact that the expertise is in those places. So that's just a question I have.
I'm not aware of one like you're mentioning. Upper Ark is probably the one that the city should be most concerned about. The county has a representative there. We've had a previous one to Mr. Payne here was Bob Hartzman. He attended that meeting regularly. It takes a lot of time to learn and find out what's going on in the community and on our system. But I definitely believe the city should have somebody at that meeting every month and to have a better understanding of what the water is. And I hate to be negative
Can I
here,
just-
but I'm going to say something I shouldn't, but every mayor that I've known for the last 30 years has appointed a city councilman to the committee of, on the hydraulic ditch. It was a board member, and also sent somebody to the upper arc. Now, when we do that, that person might be on for 4 years or 2 terms or whatever, but then they learn and they get off. And so we train them and then we lose out again. I think we need to have a city employee who is interested in water, and it's their responsibility to ensure water to the city in a long-term basis. And that person is the one who needs to be knowledgeable and understand what's going on in the community. And I'm not trying to take anything away from any council person, because you can't learn all the things going on in the water world in 4 years. It just doesn't happen.
I agree. And I'd like to respond to that. I'm glad you raised that. When we couldn't find something called a watershed council, I started attending the Upper Arc meetings. And then at some point mid-year, I was told that the city gets 1 rep, and that was Travis. And so that's when I stopped attending. But, you know, maybe we can revisit that, how we want to structure that, because I agree with what you say about that.
I don't believe that ever transpired. Upper Arc, our meeting is open to anyone to attend. We have a person at large, that can, not large, they have a, what they call it, a representative that can be appointed by the county or whatever. We have board members that are there too. We have a county person who is a board. Pardon?
Right.
Cough.
What?
It was just a cough.
Oh, we're good. You're
Yeah,
good.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to respond to that again, just so that I'm saying clearly what I'm trying to say. And that is that what happened in the middle of the year is I was told that the city didn't get 2 reps, and that therefore I was not the official rep, and that Travis was. But again, we can revisit all of that in the right setting if we need to.
That is inappropriate information to you, and I don't know who told you that, but I know better than that, okay? So
Well, Manny, maybe you could help us make those connections so that.
most certainly, most
Travis,
certainly.
do you attend the meeting?
No, me and Ryan have had a conversation about this, and unfortunately falls on development meeting that also happens. That's important to go to, but we've talked about maybe kind of splitting time between going to a development meeting maybe 1 month and Upper Arc next month, because yeah, obviously it's an important thing.
Or if
Not that
Travis
I
can't
have.
attend, maybe somebody else can.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
But I
just want to
have
let
that
everybody
extra
know,
time.
I have been putting together, as Manny's been working with me on working on the ditch boards. Because I do represent the city on a number of ditch boards, and I had to figure that out on my own, which ones and when and where. I've got a huge binder, several binders now, that anybody else that wants to get involved, I think they need to look at that, because it's not a good idea for everybody to start from scratch. But I do have a huge binder of all kinds of information that I've gotten from Manny, and you know, when I leave, I'm gonna see to it that the city gets it, and then the next person has that information.
Yeah, no, and to clarify, I'm very happy to do that, to be the rep on Upper Arc or attend the meetings, or however you want to put that. I want to clarify that.
I do have a specific question. Does not the city have a stormwater protection plan? Excuse me, a source water protection plan?
Yes, from 2013.
And so and I'm reacting to a comment you made that said that if you have such a plan, you get a lot of brownie points in applications and stuff. And so, but we're using that as our source water protection plan?
Well, the source water protection plan really should be updated at least every 3 years, if not kind of yearly. I mean, it should be an updated document, so it's kind of trying to breathe new life into the document.
I mean, going back to a comment that Emily made and that Levi, I'm sorry, Mr. Ewers made, Alex, sorry, that Alex made. I think it might be beneficial to put together a group of people who are interested in this, knowledgeable about this, including city council members, but also including members of RG Rio, members of industry, people who are knowledgeable and care about water, to look at not just, you know, a potential ordinance along these lines, but also kind of Canyon City's water future and what that looks like when it comes to storage and when it comes to conservation of water and when it comes to kind of our water rates and when it comes to like long-term water issues. So that we have the relevant members of the community and the people with the long-term knowledge and expertise that we definitely cannot learn in 4 years and probably not in 40 years either. Along with city council members. I think that that's a fantastic suggestion.
Well, I think in the middle of a drought that Colorado and many other states are in, it behooves us to know as much as we can about water. And again, like you guys are talking about potential for storage and things that way, because believe it or not, climate change is here. And I think we need to really start looking at that as much as we can. And this it's all inclusive, so I think that's great.
Really looking at it holistically.
Yes.
Okay, we have some other comments from anyone? So the purpose of the meeting is to give direction to a city staff, to our administrator and city staff on what we'd like to see. And so that appeared to be a suggestion along those lines. Any other recommendations or reactions from council?
For hands up.
Go ahead.
I just a quick thing. I think if we, approach this as a group, we need to have someone from the ranching community on there because we are a ranching community.
Right.
And it's ridiculous to talk about keeping cows out of the water. You know what I'm saying? We need to find out what's reasonable. There may be worse things we need to worry about in a ranching community. That's probably the least of our problems. So if we do a committee like that, we should reach out and find someone, who's knowledgeable.
I think a lot of people in this audience would be appropriate members.
Emily, you had your hand up again.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll just echo again what I said about the city maybe would like to consider not just a committee with council and community and experts and so forth, because I think we do need that, but we might also want a standing council committee itself to oversee all of these different water issues. But then the other thing I wanted to say is that I don't know how we want to address this, but I found that I have questions on about half the pages of the 2021 study. And some of them are not just questions about something in the study, but just that questions that arise from reading the content of the study. Questions like, does city staff feel like we're doing enough water sampling of our own, of our source water? Things like, has it been a problem yet for us, since that's with warming waters, that's a potential increasing problem. So I just wasn't sure how we wanted to handle questions that we have on the document.
So Travis,
I could answer those specific questions if you'd like.
well, tell you what I would suggest, maybe the best thing to do, Councilmember Tracy, is to make an appointment with Travis. If you have specific questions you'd like answered, make an appointment with Travis, sit down with him. He may not have the answers because we did have a consultant write the document, and it might take some consultant time or something to answer everything, but that would probably be a good first step. And after doing that, maybe you would want to give council at the beginning of some meeting or during general government or vision committee meeting, a little report on what you found or something like that.
Am I the chair of the new water committee? I'm just kidding. So yeah, I mean, you're giving me an assignment, John, and it's like, I might want to revise how you assign that, but anyway.
This is
I
not
guess-
an assignment. This is
Right.
not an assignment. This is a suggestion.
Okay,
You
well,
can get your answer.
my response to that is I can do that. And I think my questions would be of general interest to all of council and to the public, not just questions that I need answered personally. So I'll just say that, leave it at that.
I can briefly
Maybe
answer the
we can
questions if you want.
Email and it can be applied all and made a public document.
Yeah, I think, that'd probably be the best thing to send those questions to Travis and myself. We could work through some answers and
Okay,
probably even on the website, create an FAQ for the source water protection.
Yeah.
Plan.
So I'm curious if there's an interest for those who are attending, if there's an interest in being on a holistic water committee. I mean, I think it's the way of our.
I just have a question. Do they have to live in the city?
No, I can't speak on behalf
How
of
about-
everybody, but this
No,
has
this
to, part of that committee has to do with stuff that happens in the county. so
yes,
it makes sense.
Well, that's why I asked.
So the answer is, if you live in that area. You could be on the committee.
Sorry, pants.
So I think maybe the council, we'd have to probably pass a resolution to create the committee, we would take applications of interest. And then we would start meeting, and we have to have a specific agenda of what we want that committee to review and accomplish.
Absolutely, and that, I think that's an important point, Madam Mayor, is that if we want to do something like that, and I'm certainly not opposed to something like that, we do need to give them a charter so they understand what their mission is, and then they can figure out how to go about accomplishing that mission.
Yeah, I would suggest not limiting it to just source water. There's a lot of impending regulation coming, like the lead and copper rule and stuff like that, like in January, I believe it was January, that we're gonna have another meeting to explain that whole can of worms.
For the state.
But,
becoming
I'm just
some
saying-
Conservation regulations.
Broaden it up to like.
Sure,
water
yes,
related
absolutely.
issues.
A lot of water stuff.
And I think that would be the intent. Councilwoman Tracy, you still have your hand up?
yeah, and maybe it's been clarified. I just needed a little clarity about whether people are envisioning this committee to be kind of ad hoc for a specific purpose or two, or an ongoing committee, a standing committee that would deal with water issues years into the future.
It's probably standing, but I mean, we can also just get started and see where it takes us, but just the way the future is going, this probably is gonna need to be standing.
Yeah. Everything constant is change.
Well,
It's just a
water is gonna be more and more
dominant
important.
issue.
And dominant.
John, I have my hand up.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I did not see that.
One other thing here is the Colorado Water Congress is an organization that tracks all legislation prior to it being approved on or voted on. And all House bills, Senate bills come up and are reviewed by that organization. That organization is made up of a lot of people who are water providers and a few in agriculture. And because I'm involved in water and sit on DARCA, Ditch and Reservoir Company Alliance, and also on the BRARC, I have a seat on Colorado Water Congress. And they are the main water focus of all of Colorado. They have on their State Affairs Committee, which reviews all of the legislation. They also have a federal review. The state one, I just got notice that there is a legislator putting out a bill on burning on ditches in municipality areas. And of course, that's alarmed me considerably because we burn all the way through on the hydraulic. And that is an issue that was brought by a legislator in Boulder and in the, well, I guess Fort Collins area, because of fires that they've had recently. And all I'm saying is that one comes up and it's going to be reviewed. I do have a copy of the tentative bill. It's very similar, very written, very general. It does not have at this time any impact on the hydraulic ditch burning any more than what's already there, because we're regulated by our fire district. So I just bring that up as that's another area of really importance to cities who have to provide water to their constituents, all right?
Thank you. Okay, any other comment or do you think that you have clear guidance?
Yeah, we will put together a resolution to form the committee, put in some agenda and goals, try and put some scope around it. We'll bring that to council for review and then figure out the timing and frequency and all that type of stuff.
I think one thing that's been helpful in past committees that have been formed like this is to designate seats so that we ensure that we do have representation from the various interested parties and the various parties with the
Knowledge and skill base.
knowledge and skill base. Thank you, John. Or sorry, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So I don't know if you feel like you have enough direction on that front as well.
I think we will take a first
Perfect.
swing at it and see if we catch everybody.
Thank you.
I think just a forewarning for Andrea and Emily, who both already have water responsibilities for the city that we always point to council members. I mean, we have to vote on it, but just that's something to consider.
I'm more
Okay
than
with me.
happy. Me too. I can, at any time, I've got enough, I can bury somebody in paperwork if they want to take it over.
I would just caution against volunteering without seeing the scope.
And it's like 2 binders like that already.
Okay, there's no further comment or discussion, then we're adjourned. And thank you all for being here. Thank you very much.